Hey guys, I played a game today that I've just got to share with you. There's a few interesting things about it. One is it's possibly the most aggressive game of chess that I've ever played as the aggressor. Secondly, I tried out a new opening on this. I've just been looking at casually, I've seen a couple of videos on it. I've never done it before, and also my opponent had never seen it either. So we enjoyed kind of chatting about it as the game progressed, but it's just incredible fun. So let me take you through it. So the opening is the Halloween Gambit, and it apparently isn't sound, so you don't see top players really playing this. But at beginner and intermediate level, blitz and stuff like that, it could be a whole heap of fun. And it's weird because it starts off really boring. So I've been looking recently at like the Stafford Gambit, which comes from the Petrov defense. So where you get knight to f3, then respond with knight to f6, and then if white takes there, you come out with the knight to c6 and try and prompt the knight to take that knight, and then there's lots of traps and stuff in there. But what happens too often is that we end up in this 4 knights or 3 knights kind of game. So very standard. I thought I'd have a go at this. So I played f3, knight to c6 defending the king's pawn, knight to c3, knight to f6, the 4 knights game. And this looks like very beginnerish and very, very boring. But then all hell breaks loose with the Halloween Gambit, which continues with knight takes e5. So a lot of gambits, you give up a pawn early on in return for quick development and initiative in the game. But just check out the way this goes. So my opponent's rated 1300. He's no slouch. He knows the basics of chess, right? So naturally, knight takes knight. Black's offered the opportunity to go up a piece, and he gleefully accepts. And from this point on, it's just attack, attack, attack. So you can see Black having to defend, having to retreat, getting all his pieces on top of each other. So so d4. Now, so there's a couple of places that the knight can go from e5. c6 looks natural, everyone's familiar with that. And the other one is g6. g6 is probably the better move. And now d5. Okay, so these pawns are just coming at Black's pieces, right? Black's got a few options here. And in the end, he moved to e5, and then guess what? f4 comes out, right? Kicking the knight again. These knights are just, it's like, what's the game? It's like billiards, they're just flying all around, or pinball, Knight again retreats back to g6. Now at this point, the computer still says that Black is a pawn up into -1 point, so it still thinks that with good play, Black should be able to make that minor piece advantage count. So then I keep pushing, e5, push again, right? Now the queen comes out to e7, pinning the pawn. It should be fairly easy to defend this. I mean, you could block with the queen or the bishop, or even bishop to e3, and that would then renew the threat against the knight on f6. What I did in the game was I decided to continue. The computer doesn't like this one at all. It says Black's in a much better position here, but remember, this is always with good, accurate play, and when you've never seen a position before, even in a 30-minute game, it's not easy to find the best moves. Okay, so I pushed g4 here. I did think about it, and it's saying that d6 is the best response. That's what Black should be doing right now, and indeed, Black plays d6 and is now looking very strong. That's -3.65. But I keep pushing these pawns. In for a penny, in for a pound. So obviously now the light squared bishop can enter the game on this light diagonal. But I push again forcing the knight back. Knight moves back to d7. Computer's got black now 4 points in front. And I bring out my light squared bishop to pin the knight against the king, and the computer now likes black even more. Nearly 6 pawns up at this point in time, but black is, and I know because we were chatting at the same time, black is feeling the pressure, very much feeling the pressure. So black goes ahead and captures on e5, and I just decide to press home the advantage. This g5 pawn is protected by the dark squared bishop, so that's fine. So now I'm attacking the knight again. Knight moves to h4. I move my queen out to g4, attacking the knight. So basically I spotted that the knight now can't go there because the pawn would take. Could have gone there and taken that pawn. Couldn't go there. Could have gone there, but moving the queen there to g4 effectively wins the knight. So he captures a pawn for his trouble, and I have now won my piece back. I'm 1 pawn down, and that's how the computer rates it as well. It's got black 1 pawn better. a6 comes out to kick my bishop away. I'm thinking, when you play gambits like this, you've got to just keep on the attack. So, do I want to play a4 and then prompt b5 to come out and stuff like that? So I decided to ignore the threat completely and just castle. Okay, so I've now got a threat of queen takes f7. Okay, if his queen moves out of the way, and he decides to go ahead and take the pawn. But then I push d6. So I've now given up a second piece. I've only just got my original gambited piece back, and I've now given up a second piece in return for this opportunity just to keep attacking, keep the initiative. And look, I've even castled my king into fresh air, but that does have the advantage of bringing the rook into play behind the queen. Okay, so I'm attacking here now. The queen can't really take the pawn because that invites queen takes f7 check, and it's a tricky position now. So in the end, it's kind of the obvious move. C takes d6, but then my knight comes in to d5. Now the queen's under attack. Queen cannot retreat to d8 because then queen takes f7 would be checkmate. So that's not an option. The queen is under threat. Can't move to here. Can't take the pawn. So that really leaves e6 as the most likely one. Let's see. Yeah, but black decides that there is no hope for the queen, really. Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, let's go back. If the queen had come here to e6, then I have overwhelming advantage, knight to c7 with a fork on the king and the queen and the rook. Okay, so that wasn't an option. It really has finally just run out of space. So black plays knight to c5. I go in and take the queen, and I'm acknowledging here that because when this moves, then that is obviously creating a discovered attack on my queen. But I figure that I come out better with this. Okay, so I take queen, bishop takes queen, then knight takes bishop, and I've won a piece. So one of these kind of thought processes that I'm really practicing at the moment in chess is thinking about winning the game as the only main consideration. Okay, so if I've got a choice between this direction, this position, or another position, and I decide that actually one of those positions is very certain to win, very likely to win, then I'll tend to go for that. So sometimes you can try and grab material, but end up in a worse situation if, for example, it lets your opponent come back in with counterattacks and stuff like that. So I'm really focusing on this. So I did think about this. I've used 12 minutes of my time already. So I'm playing carefully. It's a brand new opening. I've never done it before. Okay, so this wins me my second piece back. So I've sacrificed 2 pieces and I've won them back because black is in such an uncomfortable and ugly situation. Now I'm not in a beautiful situation here with my king extremely exposed, and I'm still actually 2 pawns down in material at this point. So black now pushes g6, and I'm thinking that he's got ideas of fianchettoing his dark square bishop on g7, which makes sense. And don't really want him to do that. I mean, but at the same time, I'm thinking his bishop really wants to be in the board, you know, playing more of an active role in the game. So I'm noticing that there are several weak pawns now in black structure. He is 2 pawns up, but he's got these isolated and doubled pawns there on the b file. And so my job now is to think, well, how can I keep making life difficult for black? So what I'm thinking of doing now is I'm going to maneuver my knight back round. It would be great to get to c7 with a fork on the king and on the rook. Also options of going from d5 to f6 with check. If I can make that king move off his spot, then he can't castle. And that will definitely be to my advantage. I mean, right now, one of my weaknesses in the game is that my king is exposed. Black also has a similar weakness in that his king is in the middle of the board, but he does have this nice pawn structure here, and if he fianchettos his bishop into there and then castles, then that king is going to be pretty well defended because I haven't got an awful lot of pieces on the board to attack him with. Okay, now black comes out with his rook. My knight dives into d5, and then the bishop fianchetto move comes in, and I decide to throw in the check. This is going to force the king to move. Okay, not a great move because then rook takes f7, protects the knight, comes with check, and wins the bishop. Okay, so black moves across, I snatch the bishop, and interestingly, it's still got, even though I'm now a piece in front, the computer still thinks that black is in a better situation. Comes out with his rook, which is not the strongest move, so I decide to bring out my bishop, which then frees up my a rook to guard the back rank here. Rook now comes out attacking the knight, and if you look at it, actually my knight can't go there, can't go there, can't go there because king will take, can't go there because king will take, can't go there because knight will take, and the rook is guarding e8. So that actually does win the knight. So what I decide to do is grab black's knight. I want to keep my advantage as much as possible, right? So rook takes with check, same kind of pattern that we saw before, and now the king cannot recapture the bishop, so king takes the rook, and my bishop comes back out to safety, and also where it's looking after g5. So now at this point, let's look at the story of the board. What is the what's going on here? So pawn wise, black's got these doubled and isolated pawns on the b file. That is not good for black. He's got a second pawn island there in d and e, and he's got another pawn island. So he's got 3 pawn islands, one of which is doubled pawns. I've got an extra bishop on the board, but I am a pawn behind. So rook comes into e4. King moves towards the middle of the board to defend. I really don't want to abandon this pawn here. It's going to be all about pawns right now. And I decide to push my king up to f3. Now this pawn, this d pawn that's just come to d5, it can't push further because it is currently the only defender of that rook. So I would have king takes rook, if pawn takes bishop, king takes pawn, and it's an absolutely winning position because I'd be up a rook. So king starts to come in. I move my rook across. So what I've noticed now is this rook can't move along the e file. It can only move on this fourth rank. Okay, so if I play rook to g4, where it's protected by the king, that will force an exchange of rooks if I wish. Okay, king continues to move in. So I go ahead for this, right? I'm up in material. I have a slightly better pawn situation, I would say, even though I'm one pawn down. But I decided that the trade will be good for me. In the end, king comes in, I take, pawn takes. King can't recapture, obviously. So now he's got two pairs of doubled and isolated pawns. It's going to be very, very difficult now to win the game. And at this point, I remember even saying to myself out loud, I've got a decision here. I'm either going to keep my king on the king side of the board and try and maybe get one of these pawns through with the support of the king and try and queen that way. Or my king could come over this side of the board on the queen side and try and target these very weak pawns on the b file. At the same time, I'm thinking actually these three pawns here on ABC make a really nice kind of force field, and they're combined as well with the bishop. So this king is really going to struggle to get through on that side of the board. Anyway, I'm not worried about the b pawns. They can shuffle up the board all they want, and I can very, very easily block them just by playing b3, for example. So I decide to keep my king on this side. And now I'm going to launch my kingside attack. Black's king comes back, and then I switch sides of the board. So I'm really kind of rubbing his nose in it at the moment. That I have all these options, and he can only react and respond. King moves back. I press my king forwards. Then I press h5. Then b3. So now I've got ideas of maybe playing a4 if takes, and I've got now pawns on either side of this poor b pawn. So I just have to push them up together, and one of them has to break through. Black plays h6. I ignore that. Takes, and this really is now hopeless for black. My king is going to come across. And here you can see the weakness of the isolated pawns. King moves again. I decide to take the other pawn. And then it's pretty much, that was a mouse slip. I shouldn't have moved sideways there. I meant to take the pawn. Then it's just a question of not allowing my opponent to get stalemate. And so here, obviously, he's got a7. Then my pawn is unstoppable. And that's it. Game over. But absolutely wonderful game to play. This is definitely, even in rapid time rating, 30-minute game, heaps and heaps of fun. I really had to think, but it's just so enjoyable, just taking that initiative and really kicking those knights backwards and backwards and backwards at the start of the game. There's so many opportunities for black to go wrong and lose control of the game at this point. But as you can see, for most of the game, the computer actually, rated black as in a stronger position. But that is only relevant if you know what you're doing and if you can keep finding the best moves. So if you're like me, if you like really aggressive gambity kind of chess, then maybe check out this Halloween Gambit. Particularly if you play a lot of blitz, and I think you'll have a lot of fun. I'm certainly having a lot of fun, and I'm going to keep playing this opening. See you next time.